Hello and welcome to Zooming Tropes. We're on Zoom. I'm David.
And I'm Hannah, and yes, today we are doing the Zoom thing, embracing the technology
If
of
you guys didn't know,
quarantine.
if you don't watch like the video version of our podcast that we put up every week, we've been recording it on Zoom, and to celebrate, I have my little Zoom hat on that you can't see if
You're
you're listening to the podcast.
you're a Zoom stan.
I'm definitely not a Zoom stan, but it is the app of choice. It seems like for all of our interactions, and
Right.
in so doing, it's also infected our TVs. Right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
we're all living in the grid right now, in the Matrix style. We're on the
Uh,
grid. Or no, wait, that's a Tron thing, right? That's not.
we're all in the Brady Bunch.
We're all in the Brady Bunch these days. I wanted to talk about the television that we're experiencing right now, television in quarantine, television produced socially distanced.
Yeah.
And one of the major tropes that's sort of evolved out of the necessity of socially distanced production is the Zoom TV episode, the
Yeah.
episode that takes place entirely on the computer screen through a Zoom or Zoom like interface.
Yes, or more than just the Zoom episode, we're also now getting Zoom shows, like entire
Right.
series that are Zoom centric.
And sometimes they're actually shot on like Zoom, like using Zoom specifically. Sometimes they're shot like on everybody's iPhones because it's hard to get everyone like a really nice camera, but you can get them a
A
decent
decent
iPhone
iPhone.
camera. And then some of them are shot just totally fake Zoom, like there's
Yeah.
actually people in their apartments, shooting them, or they're going to specific sets and shooting, but it just
Hmm.
looks like it's a Zoom meeting that
Yeah.
you're watching, that you're Zoom bombing. So
Oh
no,
God.
I haven't been able to find like a good list compiled by anyone of like every fictional TV show that involves Zoom communications. So
Yeah.
I put together kind of
So
a
you made
makeshift one of my
one.
own.
You did
Yeah,
it.
so I thought we would just kind of run through like the history of this, the how it's come to be that this is the way TV is now.
Right,
Especially
right.
since a lot of these shows people are just not watching. There's like a total non-participation in these these shows that are meant to be, I guess, cultural touchstones of some kind.
Yeah, yeah, they're supposed to be. I mean, there's definitely a vibe, especially to, a lot of the one-offs that this is an event of some kind.
Right.
You
But
should,
it's an event that no one cares about.
right, because everyone's sick of looking at Zoom screens on their own. And so they're
Right.
like, why do I want to watch Tina Fey on a Zoom screen? I
Right.
don't care that much.
So as far as I can tell, the very first Zoom fictional television that was produced was the Saturday Night Live at Home series, because of course you can't do a live show at home, and of course you had all of these late night talk shows that were starting to be recorded in the home around this time, but
Right.
Saturday Night Live is kind of in between. It's like a variety show. There's musical performances, but there's also live sketches. But so they just were like, what if we just record the live sketches and then show them?
Right.
And so that's kind of what happened. So the first one was hosted by Tom Hanks, who was one of the first like big celebrities to be diagnosed with COVID and then
Mm-hmm.
to recover. So he was the first to host,
Mm-hmm.
and you had a lot of just terrible normal SNL sketches, like a bad President Trump impression, but it had to be done audio only because they couldn't get the makeup team to come in and do Alec Baldwin's makeup.
Right.
And you had some like some music videos, some Pete Davidson sort of
I kind of liked the Pete Davidson music videos. I'm not gonna lie.
yeah,
Like,
no, I think that the younger cast members kind of have
yeah,
like a better sense of what a YouTube video is and
right.
what it's supposed to be like. So I think that is part of what makes them better at dealing with these things.
Right,
But
right,
the things that I found interesting were like the Zoom centric sketches.
right.
So there was like one sketch that had Adie Bryant and
Kate
uh,
McKinnon.
yeah, Kate McKinnon as like these old ladies on a Zoom call, and they don't understand like the privacy
Yeah,
of Zoom, and it now it's reached like a level where it's like almost not funny anymore because you have
yeah,
like stories about people like legitimately not realizing it and like taking off their clothes on Zoom and sexually harassing people on Zoom. And so like the joke of Adie Bryant bringing the Zoom call into the bathroom with her is maybe not as funny now, but
mm.
at the time, man, it still wasn't funny.
Oh my God.
But yeah, it was like almost all of the sketches kind of like they're trying to adopt this internet friendly aesthetic because the place where we associate like a webcam filming us or like a very, you know, a medium shot of somebody's, shoulders up and they're talking, we associate that with YouTube, with
Yeah,
Twitch, with Instagram, with TikTok, and all of
right.
these things kind of are becoming more enmeshed with TV as a result of quarantine.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because I think on the internet, there's this idea that these are supposed to be very, like, this shot feels very confessional, and like
Yes.
TV has sort of used that with like mockumentaries and documentaries as sort of like, the talking heads section of
Yes.
those sorts of features. And so now they're sort of having to play around with what we're expecting, and then like it's not just sort of intimate confessions, or when it is, like how are we sort of coping with the fact that we're not just intimately confessing to, an anonymous internet or to one or two friends, but to potentially like an entire Zoom call of people.
Right. Yeah. So all of these things are kind of starting right at the beginning. This is back in April, before anyone really knew what was going on, but
Or
there was
how
still like
long.
just enough time to produce some television,
Yeah.
on the tight schedule that Saturday Night Live has.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start to have, other people sort of putting together fundraisers and public service things in order to kind of, raise awareness for the disease and
Yeah.
to bring, and to feed people. And then every episode, I think, including the Tom Hanks one, includes like a big thank you to our essential workers,
Mm-hmm.
and it's kind of this like I don't know. How do you feel about like these like thank you statements? Do they come across as authentic to you?
I mean, I don't think that any of these people are like full essential workers, like I don't think they're antagonistic towards these people, but saying thanks on a TV show feels about as empty as like New Yorkers clapping for people. It's like, yeah,
Right.
okay, you're thanking us, but like I'm still out here risking my life. What are you going to do about that?
Right.
Like it doesn't address the material needs and concerns of these people in any realistic way.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. It's just that it's symbolic. It's
Yeah.
purely symbolic. And so a lot of these things that are happening don't really affect the celebrity class, the television making class in any
Right.
meaningful way. And
Right.
so them just sort of, clapping for essential workers
Well,
and
right. It
often
doesn't.
including like police in that in the early months. Uh, that
Right.
that can be kind of awkward.
Right. And it doesn't affect these, because I don't want to lump the entire entertainment industry together, because lots of people in the entertainment industry have been really, really negatively impacted by this, especially like crew members and, you know, bit actors and live theater actors and musicians and, you know, people like that. But these, you know, the Tina Feys of the world and the Kate McKinnons of the world are fine. You know, they still have a job. They're still doing things. They can order Uber Eats. Like it's
Right.
not the end of the world for them.
Yeah, at the same time, like I do respect the, you know, that a lot of people who aren't suffering in any material way are still suffering emotionally and
Yes,
socially and everything.
that's true.
I'm not saying that those things don't matter, but to be able to go on television and do a big sketch about how we're all suffering under COVID and come across as like, well, it's a little uneven. And also,
Yeah.
since all of your sketches are shot to be like Zoom meetings, you're kind of reflecting a particular experience of quarantine, a
Right.
wealthy work from home experience of quarantine.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I-
So yeah, that was the beginning. That was back in April, and then like
right.
what kind of stuff was coming out after that?
Well, also in April we have the BuzzFeed Tasty special, Saturday Night Seder, which
Right. So a bunch of
uh,
Jews and a bunch of
not Jews.
goys just you know, telling the story of Passover,
Yeah.
which I wasn't sure if that like counts as fictional television, but it's there's a sketch kind of storytelling element to
Yeah.
it, so I think it counts.
Yeah. You know, then we get Sesame Street jumping in on the action in mid-April, with Elmo's Playdate.
Right. So
And
now we have the start of, you know, we have to teach kids what's going on. We have to,
right,
you know, help
because
kids to understand this complicated thing and
yeah.
also to teach them how to socialize and have fun so they don't grow up to be psychopaths or, you know,
Well, right, because
otherwise
you know,
just
that's
desocialized humans.
right. That is definitely, as someone who's currently working with like young children, like that is one of the major concerns is their social and emotional development, and like there's almost more worry about that than like, you know, math and reading development,
Right.
because like those are skills that you can continue to build and pick up throughout your life, but like knowing how to like share and control your emotions and like interact with other humans is like really key essential stuff that like a lot of kids are being like low-key deprived of right now.
Right. Unless it ends up being less important in the future because we'll just be stuck inside forever.
Yeah, it's
In
fine.
which case, they might be better prepared than us to socialize over
Oh
Zoom for that extended
my
period of
God.
time.
God, I hope not.
So Sesame Street, in addition to doing those, you know, first couple specials, they continued to partner with CNN to explain a lot of what's going on to kids and to families. So there was a special called The ABCs of COVID that was back in April 25th. And
Mhm.
then after the George Floyd killing happened, in June, there was a special called "Coming Together: Standing Up to Racism," a CNN Sesame Street town hall for kids and families. And then there was a Sesame Street special about the same thing that was in October 15th, so very recently, called "The Power
Mhm.
of We," a Sesame Street special, which was more about this, you know, the idea of solidarity and social justice in the context of puppets, which I think it's good for, you know, to teach kids about these
Yeah.
things. I think that's positive. It's interesting that this move is happening like after they're on HBO, but a lot of these specials are still being shown on PBS. So it's just a slightly different pathway to public
Yeah.
television,
Yeah.
where it's being produced like sort of supplemented by HBO, and it's also functioning as kind of like an ad for HBO, even though they
Right.
are showing the more important, like socially relevant specials on PBS and on other channels.
Right, but I think it's so interesting because, you know, most families, you know, even if they are accessing PBS, they might not necessarily be accessing it through their cable channels. Like they are potentially streaming CBS. Like I know lots of families use like the PBS like website to
Yeah.
stream Sesame Street episodes for their kids. And like the newer Sesame Street episodes, even the specials, are not available on the
Well,
BBC
some of
website.
them were, and some of them weren't. I think that some of them
Yeah,
were designed to be HBO exclusive, and then the
right.
more
But
socially relevant ones are on there. I think Power of We is up there.
oh, is it? But some of
Yeah,
the original older ones, like Elmo's Playdate, are no longer still
yeah.
on.
I think that one was specifically just for HBO Max, and it was kind of a branding thing that they did. But
Mm,
they initially broadcast it on like all of their channels, so
okay.
it was on like all the HBO channels, but also on PBS Kids, on TBS, TNT, True TV, and even Cartoon Network played
Mm,
Elmo's Playdate. So it was kind of this like public service thing that was also promotional. And I think
got
that's
it.
how you see a lot of these networks dealing with COVID is that everything is simultaneously like a social benefit, but also a branding opportunity for them
Right. Which
and a way
is,
to situate themselves as like, we want to end hunger during COVID. We want to, you
look how
know,
good we are. We don't just want your subscription money. We care
right.
about hunger.
We care about mental health. We care about racism. We care about
Yeah.
these things. And that's sort of the way that they choose to deal with this crisis.
Right. Right.
TV in crisis
So
becomes like a public service.
right. So sort of jumping back to April, we have also jumping across the pond, the BBC gets into the action, and they do a children in need and comic relief sort of like mishmash fundraiser called the Big Night In.
Right.
I did not.
I like the title of this one
Yeah.
because it's the big night in. Like we're just taking a night to not go out and we're just relaxing and it'll just be all be over in the morning and then we'll all go back
Right.
to work and it'll be fine.
Yeah. But I mean, this was like, their usual sketch comedy, whatnot,
Yeah.
in the name of fundraising
And musical
for and musical
performances and
performances.
speeches and all the things that they would typically do for their comic relief events, but they're just
Hmm.
having another one. The BBC, of course, as opposed to a lot of American television, is publicly funded. It's funded by licensing fees that people pay to use the iPlayer or to just get television at all on their
Hmm.
sets. Um, so they have a different sort of funding system, but not totally different because they're still trying to export properties overseas
Yeah.
and
Brings in money
sell
as well.
ad time on those things, sell things to Netflix,
Right.
and they're also still trying to sell DVDs, though that's not as big a market anymore.
No, just for
Um,
collectors.
but still, I think that the BBC content is very different from, like, for example, NBC's content
Hmm.
in number of programs and in quality of programs and goal of programs. The BBC actually has this policy plan, I don't know what you'd call it, initiative, which is called Culture in Quarantine, where they're trying to
Okay.
make television sort of replace museums and art and just kind of represent a new way to experience culture. They have a book club that's through
Hmm.
television where you have celebrities reading their favorite books and you're supposed to read along with them. So
Interesting.
it's very much of like we have to uplift people culturally during this troubling time where they cannot experience culture for themselves. Very
Right.
like paternalistic, very elitist kind of media, which
Sure.
I don't necessarily object to. It's just like very different goals than what you're having in America.
Right. Or it's like we need to desperately entertain these people so they stop rioting in the streets.
Right, exactly.
It's
And we need to
interfering
sell
with our
ad time, and
profits.
we need to, in the case of NBC, we need to replace our big upfront ad selling event that's coming up. That we were going to have a big ad presentation to sell ad time for the whole, 2020 2021 season,
Yeah.
and now that's not going to happen. So what do? We got to make
Calling the big
some
hitters.
specials. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was sort of what happened next after the Saturday Night Live at Home specials were, I guess, a meager success, or they'd experimented enough and they were ready to put it to the test. So that's I think when we get the Parks and Rec special,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Which is a piece of dead media. It doesn't exist anymore, except
Yeah.
in illegal places.
Yeah.
So what did you think of the Parks and Rec coronavirus Zoom special?
Like I know your opinion already, so I'm very defensive, but like it was fine. Like I don't know that I needed to really see these characters again. So like, like when I first heard that there was going to be a Parks and Rec reunion special, I was like, why? Like I liked the show a lot, but like it's over now. Am I a bad fan? Like am I just not into it that much? Like I just don't care. Um and it itself, I think it functions a lot as a public service announcement, like wear a mask outside, social distance, follow the guidelines being put out by the government, blah blah
Right, but with a
blah.
specific focus on mental health. I think that's the key for this episode, is that it's
Yeah.
really centrally focused on, well, yeah, I mean, I think the way that it opens with, well, not opens immediately, but one of the first sketches is of Ben Wyatt again in his isolation.
Yeah.
It has resorted to stop motion animation and remaking the Cones of Dunshire into a feature film.
Yeah.
So it's reflecting on his issues with mental health in the past and contextualizing them for the isolation that he's feeling under COVID. And there's
Hmm.
repeated references to people needing to stay social in order to maintain their mental health. That's why
Hmm.
Leslie sets up this like phone chain, which is sort of the loose narrative
Yeah.
thread that connects just random phone calls between characters.
Yeah, it's very weird. This phone chain idea. I don't know if anyone has actually practiced this in real life or not.
No, because everyone just has phone, just meetups, but that doesn't
Yeah.
work narratively for like a sitcom because you need individual scenes or else it just becomes unbelievably dull.
Uh-huh.
Which is how I felt about the reunion special for Happy Endings, which premiered, which is an ABC show, and they released it only on YouTube. So that was like another weird one that didn't come out until July 20th. But
Right.
yeah,
Also,
let's
it's
jump
like, who
around.
is asking for the Happy Endings reunion of all things?
I think it
Like,
had like a kind of cult following, that
I
show.
mean, I guess it definitely did. Like, I know people who were passionate about it, but like,
And I think it was really just that the people who made that show, like, they really like each other.
yeah, that's legit. That's
That's
legit.
what's important to making a reunion. It's not fan demand. It's
Yeah.
do the cast want to see each other again.
Right, right. That's legit. That's legit. Um yeah, so, I don't know. What do you have any other thoughts on the Parks and Rec special?
Yeah, I do. Their messaging, I think, in some ways conflicts with like the characters,
Mm,
because I look at like Ron Swanson, this like complete libertarian, I hate the government, I don't believe in government propaganda person. And he has also agreed to wear a mask, to social distance. And, it just seems so false coming out of his mouth. Like, we know he would be an anti vaxxer and an anti masker and an anti science person. He
well,
embodies
he's
that persona.
he's never been anti-science. Like that
Okay,
has
I
never
guess, yeah,
been
not necessarily
Ron's
anti-science, but he's
thing.
anti-medicine. There's an episode where he gets the
Yes.
flu and he refuses all medicine, refuses to go to the hospital.
Yeah.
He's wearing, like a puffy coat, and he's like totally dehydrated, and
Right,
like
right.
Anne
Because
comes in
he
and is like, "You have to go to the hospital," and he's like,
it's
"Damn you, woman!"
because
You
it's the
know?
whole idea of toughness and personal
Right.
responsibility and all of that, that
Right.
he
So of
definitely
course he would
subscribes
not
to.
be social distancing. He would be celebrating that the government's probably, somewhat
Shut
shut down,
down. Yeah.
and that parks are closed. He would be excited about that, but he would not be gung-ho about all of this, I can't go to my favorite store without wearing a mask.
Right.
That's my freedom.
Or go get my hair cut from the same guy for $5.
Right, exactly.
Like,
Yes.
yeah.
I mean, he would absolutely be breaking quarantine to go get secret haircuts from his
Yeah.
like weird friend. Yes. So I mean, it's in the nature, like in the spirit of, we need to provide wholesome public service entertainment and fun, and it has to be a fundraiser that doesn't contradict its own message. They kind of make Ron Swanson into this, I also care about other people and not just myself character.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, Ron Swanson does not necessarily not care about others, but he definitely is highly individualistic,
Right.
and doesn't believe in the nanny state, and
Right.
you
He
could,
also, when he's told about mental health resources, he pulls out
yeah,
a bunch of whiskey and says, "This is the only mental health I need."
yeah,
So it's kind of undercutting its own message just with that one character, which is
yeah,
sort of like the point of Parks and Rec, is that it was this story about political people setting aside their differences and supporting
to
a
get
common
stuff
cause.
done. Yeah.
To get stuff done, right, for the public good.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what we're seeing here.
Yeah, a little bit.
Did you find any of like the local TV things, the return to You Heard with Purd or anything like that? Did you find any of that useful or interesting for understanding local TV's response to COVID?
No, not at all. I mean, I feel very disconnected from local TV since I am a hardcore millennial and like don't
Right, cable
watch
cutter.
TV. Like, right. I
Right.
mean, we technically have like a free, like basic access like transmitter or whatever, but like, we don't watch it ever.
No.
Like we're just on the computer all the time, and we watch things on our own time. We're not tied to the linearness of traditional television.
Right.
Yeah.
The next special that came out chronologically was May 4th. It was the final episode of the CBS drama, kind of dramedy, I guess, but mostly drama, All Rise, which is like a courtroom drama about a young African American woman who's a judge of a Los Angeles court. And yeah, I really think this episode it kind of represents like maybe the possibility of quarantine TV to address certain segments of our society that now have been forced onto Zoom, because it's sort of covering how the court system might actually work and function under Zoom, and
Yeah.
what the challenges are to criminal justice under a quarantine where people cannot see their jury in person or meet with their lawyer in person.
Yeah.
They're forced to do it over these over webcams that are probably made by for-profit companies profiting off of prisons.
Right.
It's a tough thing, and I think All Rise really does try its best to address that, especially since it was written so hastily and they canceled whatever their normal season finale would have been.
Do you feel that this episode, did it have sort of like a come together kind of message to it, or do you think it was a little bit more critical or cynical? Like how would you place it?
It definitely had the moment at the end of the episode where there's like a big dance thing and there's like a million squares, and I think some of them are like fans and I think some of them are crew, because they really made a big deal out of the fact that this was produced socially distanced, because this was very early in quarantine.
Right.
It was still weird and different to do a drama
right.
socially distanced, and everyone's just filming themselves. They set up their own little tripods and then have their laptops.
The audio is the best they can do.
I think most of their audio was pretty much fine. I mean, it's definitely not TV quality, but it's not supposed to be. It's supposed to kind of sound like a Zoom call.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so they made a big deal out of the production, which of course like you were saying, how this affects like crew members. I mean, there are no crews.
Yeah.
What the crews are doing now is they're sort of offering their expertise over Zoom to kind of assist where these actors are kind of self-directing, they're self, camera operating, they're self lighting, they're self everything. And it's all of these people like the lighting person's job is to, say, all right, flip on that light and turn on that light. And here's how you set up this ring light that we mailed to you. And then the costume designer's job is just like mail you clothes and say, all right, well, here's like what I think you should wear. And, here's how you should do your own makeup. And here's how you should do your own hair.
Here's my makeup tutorial. Here's my hairdo tutorial.
It's kind of a fascinating thing where, instead of doing the actor's makeup, they're doing a makeup tutorial.
Right.
Becoming producers of themselves.
Yeah. On the exact opposite end of the spectrum, I think, from All Rise, we have Nickelodeon. Danger Force did a quarantine special. And I gotta say, I feel like of all of them, this is the one that I just had like the least amount of patience for.
Right. Well, I mean, it's a kids show. I don't know if anybody who watches is familiar with Danger Force or its prequel series, Henry Danger. This is like a franchise for Nick right now. It's about superheroes and it's like an adult superhero and his like kid sidekicks. In the original show, it was one kid sidekick, and now it's like 4.
Yeah.
It's like a diverse cast of racially diverse kid superheroes.
Yeah. But this is called Quarantini because there was a fart release. It basically is just a bad smell in the whole town, so you can't go outside. And it's like
the fart factory releases like a gas leak, and so they can't go outside. It's a way to sort of address the disease without requiring them to explain what a disease is in case the kids' parents have not told them yet.
Or don't believe in that.
Or don't believe in it. Yeah, you're right. There might be a political sort of angle to it where it's kind of a hoax created by a supervillain.
Right.
In this case, Ariana Grande's brother, I think.
Is that who he's supposed to the great Franchini? I don't think he has anything to do.
He's played by, I think, Ariana Grande's brother.
Oh, okay. I don't know. But it's very strange just because he's so queer coded, and it's like, I think he's gay, yeah. But it's like the fucking the queers caused the quarantine. It's just like the AIDS. It's AIDS all over again.
He's like gay Joker, and he's a somewhat problematic figure. But he's the arch nemesis of Captain Man.
I don't know.
I don't think that there's anything like that significant in this episode, other than I'm really interested in the idea of the laugh track being still a part of this, because for the SNL at home thing, obviously there's no laugh track added, there's no live audience, except for Michael Che for one of the Weekend Update segments decided that he said that comedy without laughter, like live comedy without laughter, looks like hostage footage. That was like a quote from the sketch, and I thought that was just such a great summation of why so much of this comedy just fails miserably.
Right.
Is that there's no live audience.
Yeah.
And so for that one Weekend Update sketch, he performed it over Zoom to cast and crew.
Yeah.
And so there was laughter, but it was coming through a computer screen, and it was only like 6 or 7 people.
Right. But yeah. So...
After that, they didn't have any audience at all because we basically established that all of the late night shows were going to be performing without laughter. So sort of SNL then followed suit because they thought that the experiment with Zoom laughter did not work.
Okay. All right. I didn't mind it. I thought it was fine.
Right. Well, they just decided that it was not good enough for the next Weekend Update sketch.
There you go.
But for Danger Force, you gotta have the laugh track. It's Nickelodeon live action comedy. They all have laugh tracks. So you can't cut it, even though it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's also this one deals a lot with TikTok dances and learning TikTok dancing.
Right, because
So that's
kids, because what
because
do kids
kids.
do and what do kids like? TikTok
And what
dances.
are they all
Yes.
doing during quarantine? Is TikTok dances.
Right. And I
Excuse
think
me.
that's real quarantine culture. Like a lot of
Yeah.
this is sort of like imagined quarantine culture by executives like, oh yeah, people
Right.
are having phone chains on
Right.
Zoom. And yeah, people are having like drinking contests over Zoom. I don't know. What are they doing? They're
Right.
doing whatever they're doing. They're having
Yeah.
meetings in the bathroom. But this is like
Right.
real culture.
That's
It's
real
TikTok
shit. It's
dances.
TikTok dances. So what's up next, David?
There was an Apple TV Plus special of their Mythic Quest show. It's called Mythic Quest Raven's Banquet, and it's about a group of game designers
Okay.
who are led by kind of this self-centered, egotistical uh, leader played by Rob McElhenney from It's Always
Mm.
Sunny.
Uh-huh.
Um, and one of the writers of this episode, Megan Gans, wrote for It's Always Sunny, and also wrote for Modern Family way back when they did what may have been the first like Zoom special ever, even before Zoom was a thing. Um,
Uh-huh.
they had this episode about that took place entirely on Claire's desktop, and it was just all about her like calling all of her family and trying to figure out where everyone is, and
Mm.
Google searching things and checking flight times online.
Right.
And it was
And
all
it
just a
was
big ad for Apple products because everything was shot on iPhones.
oh man, hilarious. Love it. And by
Right.
love it I mean hate it. So then we just get into the era of like June was good for BBC
Right. Things come
quarantine.
in waves, right? Because there was a lot of the like rush to programming for
Yeah,
everything in
in April and
in that
May.
first month where they were just like,
Yeah.
okay, just put out like whatever we can really quickly.
Just got to do a
Um,
fundraiser.
right. But the BBC, of course, they were sort of planning ahead and they were like, all right, we need to have sort of a regular scheduled programming for throughout June. And they
Mhm.
did. And it was all this very culturally uplifting stuff for the most part, sort of unifying behind the British identity, the kind of stuff that you look at the BBC and you're like, oh yeah, it's like, I don't know, a bunch of shows about old white Brits uh, just saying how British they are and how much they like tea. And that's
Downton
kind of like what we
Abbey.
get. Yeah, it's you can't do Downton Abbey quarantine episode, but we get
Oh, yes,
about them.
please, the Spanish flu. Just make it happen. They
Yeah, but
can do
they
it.
don't have Zoom.
They all just write letters to each other. It'll be an entirely epistolary
That would
TV
be
episode.
amazing. An
I would pay good
entirely
money for
letter
that.
driven
We just see
episode.
people writing letters and then delivering letters and then dropping dead.
Right. Well, instead of that, we have an episode of the popular soap opera Doctors, which is of course a medical drama, kind of like General Hospital. And they had an episode called "Can You Hear Me," where all of the characters of doctors were communicating solely through Zoom. And again, this is like communicating the best medical practices for the
Hmm.
audiences. When should you go to the hospital? What is being at the hospital like these days? And
Right.
then on top of that, sort of conveying the difficulties of the NHS right now and how everyone's struggling and hospitals are full, kind of
Yeah.
thing. So
Yeah,
communicating a kind of British solidarity.
totally. Do you I didn't get a chance to watch any of the BBC specials. Is there any other like sort of notable ones that you wanted to mention from the sort
Yeah,
of
I think
June
for
onslaught?
fans of Good Omens, of which I'm not one, but I'm sure many of our listeners are.
Yeah.
Uh, there was this special that was, or this series that was put together by Michael Sheen and David
David
Tennant.
Tennant and Neil
Sort of,
Gaiman, who wrote for all of these.
did you write for all of them?
Oh, he definitely wrote for the couple that you sent me.
Okay, well, in any case, there's a lot of interesting writers and guest stars on these
Yeah.
things, but they made a special called Staged where they play themselves on a Zoom call trying to put together a staged reading of a play. I believe it's Six Characters in Search of an Author, or
Okay.
whatever the name of that play is that I
Yeah,
can't
yeah,
remember the correct name of.
yeah.
um, but it's just them sort of bantering with each other and bickering with each other, which I assume is the appeal of Good Omens, is it not?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
It's the
That is
banter.
part of it. Is definitely the banter and the sexual tension.
They're wonderful banterers, and they just sort of have like a pissing contest about who's like the more popular actor, who's the better actor, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And all of this is through Zoom calls that are mostly improvised. And I think that this is like the best comedy that's come out of quarantine so far.
Oh yeah, I think I almost think that improv is definitely the way to go. As far as
Right,
like
because Zoom already feels so like real life, you know?
yeah.
It's how we experience all of our social interactions today. So
Mm-hmm.
to have it be so scripted and stilted and everyone recording on their own is like
Right.
death. It's terrible for comedy. But having it be, you know, the awkwardness of the stiltedness of Zoom conversation captured in real time, that's great.
Yeah.
They're bringing in Ben Schwartz for season 2, who's a great improviser and has
It's
become very
incredible.
popular lately. And they had Dame Judi Dench in season 1.
Oh
Hopefully,
my
she'll come
gosh.
back. So I'm very positive about Staged, which I think had something like 6 episodes. You know, a typical British TV season.
Mm-hmm.
But then they also had, you know, this cultural uplift programming. Like they brought back this program called Alan Bennett's Talking Heads, which is all just monologues. And so I
Okay.
thought, even though it's not like over Zoom,
Yeah.
it's the monologue has become like the aesthetic key
Yeah.
of television, the direct address. And so I thought that was somewhat important to reference.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there are other, you know, non BBC public television entities for Ireland
Mm-hmm.
and other places in the UK that had their own comic relief events
Mm-hmm.
at
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
times. So I think
Um,
that's most of what was important about the BBC stuff.
yeah. Sort of on the other end of the spectrum, in YouTube land, there's there's this strange show called Lockdown that's on YouTube. It's a YouTube original. What are your thoughts on this, David? It's like a teen mystery thriller, but it
Yeah,
doesn't
I
make.
love this for
Oh,
kids. I
I
think,
hate this.
well, it's for kids. I'm saying it's not for me, but I think, you know, kids need like more dramatic content in their life, you know, stuff that's you know, more horror based or more, you know, drama based, mystery based. And this is like Unfriended, that movie that was like kind of a horror thriller ghost thing
I
about
guess.
Skype calls.
That's the other thing, and I'm sure everyone has joked about already, but like, you know, we're talking about Zoom, and this is like Zoom TV shows. Skype, you really shit the bed on this one. Like,
Right,
this
Skype
was your
somehow
moment.
missed.
This was your
Well, I
moment.
mean, the reason we don't use Skype is because we have, you know, these wonderful Zoom backgrounds and our wonderful Zoom, you know,
uh,
filters, like my Zoom hat
yeah,
that I'm wearing.
it's incredible.
Um,
I love your Zoom hat because you are a true Zoom stan, no matter what you say.
right, but I guess the
Um,
trade-off there is that we're selling our face capture, which is now being like, that data is obviously not secure and is going to be
no.
sold to the highest bidder once, you know, once they find a buyer for it, and we're being surveilled by the government at all times, who now know all of our faces.
Hey, what's up, personal FBI agent? There's a joke about that in I think Danger Force, but maybe I'm wrong. There was a joke about like my personal assigned FBI agent like
I think it
watching
was in
me.
Connecting, actually.
Was it in Connecting? Okay.
All right,
There's
well,
no
we'll
one
get
of them.
there.
We'll get there.
But Lockdown, you know, it's like Canadian American television. It's like, you know, the original Degrassi, but with more flirting, maybe
I
just as much
would,
flirting.
I don't know, just as much flirting for sure, but a lot more murder or potential
Right, but
murder.
it's spoiler alert, it's fake murder. There's no real
It's
murder.
not a murder.
But I think, I think it's fine for kids, and I like that at least YouTube recognizes that it's this huge content provider for kids, and that it should be
Yeah.
providing kind of smartly-ish written mystery thriller shows
Was it
for
smartly
kids.
written though? Because
I
here's,
don't know, compared to Danger Force.
I mean, compared to Danger Force, yes, but I think they have two wildly different like target audiences. Like Lockdown is
Right.
for teens. This is the same people who are watching Riverdale, but like, you know,
Are
Danger
they
Force
watching
is for
Riverdale? I
7-year-olds.
don't know.
I think yes, that's teens fucking love Riverdale. What are you talking about? It's a
I don't
teen
think this is
show.
actually for teens though. I think it's like
Really? You think it's for
the
younger?
characters are teens, and like it's for like 7 or 8 year olds, or
Mm.
maybe tweens
It's for
perhaps,
tweens.
11.
It's kind of Zoe 101-ish.
Right. Well, when did you watch that? When you were like 11?
Right. I'm saying like that's the tweens, yeah.
Right. But you weren't watching
Um,
like Riverdale type shows that
when
existed
I was
back then.
11, no. That wasn't until I was 13.
It's a time of great emotional maturity and growth
Yeah, yeah.
for our youth.
Um, Also sort of on the, streaming side of things, Netflix has produced quite a few shows,
Just
or
a couple
just a
actually.
couple, I
It
guess.
was it was pretty limited because what they released first was kind of this thing of Netflix is somewhere between television and film always,
Yeah,
and it situates itself there. That it's been like what people recognize Netflix for during quarantine is not these two shows, but
right.
it's for Tiger King and
Hmm.
Unorthodox, and also all of the films that they've released over the course of quarantine,
Right.
which I watched several of.
And
And
a lot of reality sort of programming that,
right, well, they've
obviously all
definitely
pre-recorded, but
right.
being
They've definitely
released
branched
randomly.
into reality in a big way.
Yeah.
But this was it's a show called Homemade, which is just a collection of short films created by a bunch of independent producers who don't necessarily have a distribution platform
Right.
outside of festivals, which are now
Yeah.
non-existent.
Yeah.
So these are very quickly made, quick response films. A lot of them are somewhat interesting. There was one that was specifically a Zoom sort of special. Did you watch that
Uh-huh.
one?
Yeah, the one with the Spanish man
Yeah,
and
Chilean, but
oh, Chilean.
speaking
Yes, yes,
Spanish. Yeah.
yes, yes.
It was this was a film by Pablo Larraín, who is a Chilean filmmaker, um, and basically it's just an old man on a Zoom call with an ex-lover who he's saying like, I'm in a nursing home, I could die, but you were the one love of my life. What did you think of this one?
I like the twist. It's fun. Because he's like a lot of it is almost like a monologue,
Yes.
speaking going back to that, where it's mostly him monologuing at this woman with her occasionally sort of like saying a line or two here or there. Um, and then at the end, she's basically like, "Oh, you saying all these things, they're so romantic, so erotic. Am I the first one you've called, or have you called all the others too?" And it turns out he's this serial philanderer who is sort of
Right.
calling all of his old flames and old
And
mistresses
telling them
and
all they're the one.
right. Yeah. Lying and saying like, "Ugh, my ugly, hideous wife, and she wasn't worth it. I made such a mistake leaving you, and I named my daughter after you just so I could say your name." And like, all of these very strange things.
Yeah.
Um, and then, it turns out that all of them just chew him out at the end, and he just is like, "Oh, they hung up. All right, let's call the next one," to like the nursing assistant in the room.
Right.
Um,
So Zoom and comedy, again, we see this
yeah.
sort of alignment that it's hard to take Zoom seriously for whatever reason. It doesn't
Hmm.
feel real. It doesn't feel dramatic.
Yeah.
It undercuts itself. And then also, yes, the disconnect and the searching for connection, that
Yeah.
theme that runs through everything.
Yeah. Totally. Absolutely. Yeah, I would say I would say check out Homemade and the short films.
Yeah, some of them are good. Most of
Some
them I
are,
think are somewhat forgettable, but
yeah,
it's an interesting sort of new new way to display a set of thematically related
Rose.
short films from independent artists.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
But Netflix also a couple weeks ago released a show called Social Distance, which is definitely more along the lines of like what we were seeing with all of our other Zoom episodes. It's a series of one-off anthology bits showing different
Yeah,
conflicts on Zoom. There's 8
right.
episodes. There's
And
like one with Oscar. I forget his actual last name, but Oscar Martinez from The Office, um, who
mhm,
he's like at a funeral for his father,
his
who
dad.
was secretly gay, and their uncle is on, who was actually his lover, and they just called him their uncle.
Yeah.
And there's like drama and conflict. And then there's one about like a guy who's like trying to stay sober under quarantine. And he's like singing to his
Yeah.
plant, and then he gets drunk, and then that's how the episode ends, like very depressingly. Um,
Yeah.
there's an episode where two black people have a completely fictitious and non-realistic argument about the protests and whether they are good or not. Um,
Ugh.
and I guess they don't reach some kind of consensus, but maybe we reach some kind of synthesis of black people need to start their own
Shrug.
businesses and profit under capitalism, and black people need to protest and give up their jobs because a job and protest are incompatible somehow. I
Yeah.
don't know. None of it makes sense to me.
Who knows?
But
None
maybe
of it
it's
makes
helpful to
any
somebody.
sense. Yeah. I think Social Distance, another one, it's it's hit or miss. I think it has more to say than a lot of the original sort of Zoom anthology, like Zoom shows and specials that we were
It's had a
seeing,
little more time
especially
to
from
think
like
about it,
NBC.
about like what the emotional effects
Yeah.
are.
Right, right. And I don't know. I don't want to skip over anything else that came out sort of July through August before we get to connecting, because I feel like I have a lot to say about it. But
Right. Yeah.
like
Should we
yeah,
continue
is there
with
anything else?
NBC's contributions?
Sure, yeah.
So NBC, they are money grubbing whores. They they are
There goes
um
our sponsorship, David. Will never be picked up now.
right. So NBC, I mean, they were sort of cutting edge with this stuff. They were very experimental in the beginning with their SNL at Home thing, which
Mhm.
profited, and they had their late night shows, which also went,
Right.
Zoom focused, and they were successful. And they were like, okay,
Mhm.
well, let's try like a sitcom with it, and we'll do, Parks and Rec, because that's like a legacy show. It can be a reunion, it can be a big special,
Mhm.
and we'll do it as a fundraiser so people won't think that we're a bunch of money grubbing, what I
Hacks.
said before.
Yeah.
But then they were like, well, what about this upfront event that we're supposed to be doing to sell ad time, where we're advertising all of the shows that are coming out and advertising all of our networks, and also promoting our new streaming platform, Peacock, which is designed to be kind of like an accessory on top of linear television, but not a replacement for linear television, because we have cable channels to sell.
Yeah.
So they kind of were like, okay, well, we can, instead of having like an event where people come, we can turn it into an episode of 30 Rock and have it be a reunion episode with the whole cast of 30 Rock
Mhm.
over Zoom. And it's 30 Rock, a one time special. And this is another piece of dead media. It doesn't exist anymore. They got
Doesn't
rid of it
exist
after like a month,
anywhere.
and now it doesn't exist anywhere.
Yeah, because it
Um,
was an ad. It was an ad for the NBC shows that were coming.
right.
Like, why? It
Yeah,
had no purpose.
it's a series of in jokes. It's a series of returns. There are some interesting things going on with the filmmaking of it, I guess, in that, like, for example, you have Kenneth, the page, who is playing both himself as like the executive of NBC,
Mhm.
and also his assistant, which is just him in drag. Um,
Oh.
and they occasionally do fun gags where he like will do the makeup and like paint his fingernails and then like put his own hand on his own shoulder to make a joke about himself flirting with himself.
Yeah.
um, it's not really funny, but it is an experiment in
Yeah.
the Zoom format. How do you do a scene with two people when there's only one person
One.
there?
That doesn't involve the classic YouTube stitching together of
Right.
scenes.
I mean, that's what it is, really. It's like a YouTube show,
Yeah.
but it's just produced with a huge budget. Um,
Right.
yeah, and in this case, there's a lot of awkward jokes about quarantine. Like Jenna Maroney at one point is like, the only way that I've been able to pretend that I still have the attention that I normally do is to take credit for all the people clapping at sundown.
Oh
So,
my
like we mentioned
God.
before, all the clapping for
Essential
for
workers
essential workers, Jenna has apparently been soaking up the
appropriating it for
attention of people.
herself.
Right. So there's
Oh
jokes like
man.
that, and then there's jokes. There's a joke where Liz Lemon is talking to Twofer, which is the nickname of one of the writers from her show within a show,
Mm-hmm.
who they called him Twofer because you get two for one. He's a black guy and a Harvard guy.
Yeah.
So there's a joke in this where there's like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not calling you Twofer anymore. I'm calling you James. James, because this episode, of course, takes place during a lot of civil unrest
Mm-hmm.
over particular uh, racial discrimination in this country.
Yeah.
So you can no longer make that particular kind of joke without
Yeah.
subverting it, I guess, in whatever small way.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like the plot of the episode is that they have to put on the upfront presentation, and so then they do. And then we watch an upfront presentation on how great Peacock is going to be.
Oh my God. I
So
can't.
very different from BBC, where the BBC is like all of our things we're putting them out there to promote the greater good culturally,
Right.
very paternalistic. Like we have to tell you what you want, and then 30 Rock is like, well, why shouldn't regular viewers participate in our stockholders meeting?
Right.
We're
Exactly.
bringing you all into the process of capitalism.
See, capitalism is so democratic. You guys get to
Right.
see all the we're so transparent. Like, look
Right.
at
Now,
us.
the thing that I find most interesting about this special is that it was not shown in many of the places where it was scheduled to be shown.
Oh.
Because when the local affiliate channel, so like your local NBC 20, local NBC channel 4 or whatever, decided we're going to show this special, they looked at it and they were like, wait, this is telling people to stop watching television and start watching Peacock. I'm not going to show this. Why would I show it? So they preempted it in a lot of those places.
It's legit.
So
don't blame
in many
them.
ways a failure. And it's an interesting sort of conflict that we're not used to, is like NBC is trying to advertise people to stop watching television and start watching their new platform at the same time that they're trying to promote solidarity and we all believe in science here and we all believe in masks here.
I mean, it's the classic, capitalist conundrum that we've seen over and over again with every single Target commercial and every single Amazon commercial throughout quarantine, despite knowing that like Amazon has been one of the worst employers during COVID of like almost any of them, and yet is still making trillions of dollars. It's capitalism. Anyway, Freeform did some stuff. Do you want to talk about that, David?
Right. So, I mean, now we're getting into like people who thought that this would be over quickly.
Yeah.
And now are running into the problem of, oh my God, we don't have any content, anything new or relevant. Everything that we have is filmed in 2019.
Right.
And we're like, oh my God, we need something quick. So there was another sort of anthology series called Love in the Time of Corona, which just it wasn't actually filmed over Zoom or anything. It was filmed just, somewhat socially distanced, kind of like, but it's just like a free-form drama about coronavirus. So that came out in August 22nd. And then in September, we had HBO sort of like released a film that was kind of like a series of monologues with
Mm.
like Bette Midler and uh, uh, what's what's that guy from Schitt's Creek, the main guy, the guy who plays
Oh,
David?
Dan Levy.
Yeah, Dan Levy has his, and yeah, there's a couple of other ones, but it's like these really. The special was called Coastal Elites, and I mean, like, are you proud of that? Like, is this something that you take pride in, like
I
being
mean,
called a coastal
it's
elite?
it's HBO, David. The only fucking people who have it are also coastal elites who are low key proud
I
of
just
that.
think
So
like,
like,
it's I would literally rather watch a special called like A Basket of Deplorables or something, because like that's something to be like proud of being called, like, yeah, you know what, fuck you, I am deplorable,
and
fuck
here's
you.
why, yeah.
Here's
Reclaiming
why,
it.
because I don't believe in government or whatever. I don't know what they think makes them
Right.
good, but like a coastal elite, like, yeah, no one wants to be like a wealthy, out of touch, weird old Jew. Like
I
nobody
mean,
nobody wants to
apparently
be that.
apparently lots of people do, enough to make a TV movie about it, David.
Right. So,
That's the
it's like
thing.
Bette Midler is like playing this, completely unhinged middle-aged woman who like snatches people's like MAGA hats off their heads and like
Uh-huh.
screams at them about the public theater and like how much we love Hamilton, and then like goes to jail for it, and then at the end she like dies of coronavirus, and it's like very
Oh
tragic.
shit. That is very tragic.
Not on screen, she
Yeah,
dies.
but
She dies on
still.
screen. But it's
Still.
just like, yeah, it's again, we see the return to the monologism, and we
Hmm.
have this like political divide interacting with the quarantine divide and the isolation.
Um, I do you want to talk about Vomo at all, or should we just skip
Right,
right
well,
to
I think we continue the trend of these like, socially conscious fundraising events. This is one on ABC, that was hosted by Michelle Obama and Kevin Hart, which I guess glad he got to host something after he wasn't allowed to host the Oscars because he made a gay joke. Uh, Glad he gets to host something, I guess. Um, and yeah, he's this one is to promote voting. So good, good event. No problems with it. Lots of sketches. Will Ferrell shows up.
Mm-hmm.
Not too much else to say. And then what's left?
Connecting your
Yeah, so this is the
background.
only one that I think is currently running that I could find.
Yes. Yes.
It's the most
Um,
recent Zoom TV, and it's
current
NBC because
currently
they've done their
airing.
experiments, they've done their fundraisers, they've done their upfront events. The
We're
only thing left
in.
to do with Zoom TV is to make a series out of it.
Yep, yep. That's all that's left. And NBC has done it. They've really been at the forefront of Zoom television.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, this is airing Thursdays currently at something like 8:30, 9:30, something like that. So you can catch it if you want to. I'm enjoying this show, but David hates it. So let's get into the weeds.
I don't hate it. It's just like it's very much like let's do Friends, like the show Friends, but like with less iconic characters and with sort of unknown actors for the most part. And then we're just gonna kind of gesture at the idea of socially distanced friendship and relationships
What do you mean by
without
gesture
anything.
at it?
I don't know. It's just like what happens on like a given episode, like nothing. Just like some benign arguments.
No, I think so. So this is one thing that I think is interesting that sort of came to me as I was watching this show is that because a lot of the action is really restricted to one, what you're doing in your house, or two, the as you were saying, like these mid shots, like
Right.
above the chest, sort of just like eye contact, everyone staring straight ahead. It's that's mostly what it is. It feels, and a lot of it feels like monologues, but then when you combine a bunch of like talking heads together into a Zoom call, you basically just get a stage play without a lot of like
Right, but
blocking.
there's nothing there's nothing stage play like about the writing. It's just it doesn't fit with its form, you know? Like I
Mm,
love a good stage play. This is just a sitcom that's devoid
yeah.
of any action or plot. You know, that's all it is. It's there's no like, you know, this isn't Virginia Woolf. You know, we're not this isn't I don't know, what's a good playwright? Fuck, I'm so uncultured.
It's not Gertrude Stein.
This isn't like a
No.
David Mamet play.
Yeah.
It's there's no snap. This the dialogue is not as snappy. There's not as much of like a stakes to their conflicts. It's very low stakes.
Hmm.
Um, there's no like philosophical talk or high minded talk that I associate with stage plays. Not that that's necessarily always a good thing. Sometimes it can be
Hmm.
very pretentious, but I think like connecting when it's what it's about is like, okay, you've got your likable female lead who wants to date likable male lead, but likable female lead's not afraid to tell likable male lead that she likes him, and he likes her too, but he's afraid of rejection, so he's gonna go back to his ex and
I
blah blah
mean,
blah blah
listen, who
blah.
cares? I find them compelling and entertaining. It doesn't need to be a groundbreaking plot to check those boxes, you know? And I
Right. Well,
do
speaking of
think,
checking boxes, very very very
I
diverse
mean,
cast.
very diverse cast. And I think, I think part of what appeals to me is exactly what they were going for, is that this is kind of what a millennial friend group feels like today,
Mhm.
where half of you are like still working service jobs and working as a delivery driver. Some of you are still in school. The other half of you are like already established in a career, and you're like the like settled friends who, you're the
Are
friends with
these like
kids.
millennials? They look like 50. I
They're
don't
not 50.
they look very old to
No.
me.
I mean, there may be a little bit more Gen Z, but I'd say they go from like low Gen Z down to like my age millennials, people from their late 20s to their
You mean Gen
like
X?
Gen X, sorry, not Gen Z, yes. Um, like some people from their late 20s to like their late 30s, like that sort of 10-year gap, because
All
I
right,
don't know,
maybe.
it feels, at least to me, it feels representative of people who I am actually friends with having issues that like are very familiar to me. And I agree that sometimes the writing on the show is a little heavy handed, and that not everything is handled as well as it could have been, but I admire the impulse to try to actually have conversations about these things, and not just sort of be like,
Right.
it's fine, we're all in this together and everything's great,
Right.
like
I mean,
I
I don't think that there's anything wrong with like having people expressing like their loneliness, their isolation, their frustration with
Mhm.
their partners, these kind of things. I think those are fine conflicts to have. I just don't like find these characters in particular very compelling. I don't think they fit into like the niches that I guess I expect of like a sitcom.
Mm.
For people who like Friends, I assume that part of the appeal is that they're so like, oh, which one are you? Like,
Yeah,
are
but
you
I
the are you the Monica, the the very anal retentive one, or are you the nerdy one? Are you Ross? Are you the
mhm.
stuck up Rachel, or the I don't know, what are the other ones?
I mean, it's a
The
little bit
Joeys and Chandlers.
all right. There's the funny guys, there's the flirty guy, there's the nerdy guy,
Right. And
there's
these guys are
the
all
kooky
like, I
girl,
am the
the
wealthy wine
hot
drinking
girl.
one.
No, that's entirely not true. There are two wealthy wine drinkers, and one like semi middle class to wealthy like gay dad, but everyone else is like not that.
I just feel like they're all the ones who know each other. I don't I have trouble defining them, putting them into boxes, and maybe that's my struggle with it.
I think that's on you. I think, and I also think, we're only 3 episodes in, and I don't think it's necessarily bad that they're not just caricatures of,
No,
these
not that they're
archetypes.
caricatures or whatever, but just like what roles do they play in each other's lives? Like other than just they're all friends with each other. I felt kind of this, this like just lack of form to it. It's sort of formless at this point.
Do you feel like it's because there's no sort of explanation of the backstory of how they all like met and like
No,
became friends?
they don't
Because
the functions in each other's lives are restricted to, like a daily Zoom call or semi-daily, decompressing Zoom call where they just talk to one another. It's like they're not providing particular types of support to each other compared to just the coming together of a group of friends. It feels like, sort of the pilot, that everyone thinks that they want to pitch when they're in like college, where they're just like, me and my friends are such crazy characters, we should just all have a show, right? But then like that's not interesting.
I don't know. I'm finding it interesting and compelling enough.
Right.
We'll see if that continues throughout the remainder of the. It's only an 8 episode series, I think, right?
Yeah, that was the initial order. It was like a straight
Yeah.
to series thing because they were just like, let's get this out as quickly as possible,
We
just
just
in
need
case
content.
quarantine ends or something.
Right.
Notable, I think, is that both connecting and social distance at the end of one of their episodes, there's just like everyone just stops what they're doing, what they're talking about, and then picks up their phones and then like sees the George Floyd footage
Yeah.
and then just like starts crying, and then the episode just like cuts to black. Like
Mhm.
both of them use this tool, and I feel like it's almost like co-opting the event. I don't feel like it is that
Yeah.
respectful, but I don't know what to say about it. I'm not responsible for that at all.
Right. I mean, I think at least in connecting, that's one of the things that I don't know if they handled the best. Like I don't think it's something that they should necessarily have ignored if, it does seem like the
Right.
goal of the show is to talk about all of the like social change movements and issues that are both personal and political and social that have come up because of quarantine. That seems to be the goal of the series.
Right.
And so, I don't think it would have made sense for them to ignore George Floyd, um, or, Breonna Taylor or anything like that. But I think just the way that it was introduced into the show was very strange. And I agree with you that it feels strange that it was sort of just like everyone gets really sad and logs
Right,
off and
because
then cut to
that's how
black.
most people in real life experienced it. Is they're just like
Right.
going along with their normal life, and then suddenly there's a notification, or they're scrolling through Facebook and they see it, and
Yeah.
it's just there, and there's
Yeah.
nothing dramatic about that or comedic about it. It
Yeah.
just is a thing, and I think that that's kind of the sense that I get from almost all of these specials. Is it's just a sense of like history is happening right now. If
Yeah.
we don't acknowledge it, we are the assholes. But there's
Oh,
no
yeah.
way to acknowledge it sufficiently. And
Right.
so we're left with just this vast wasteland, to quote a famous monologue about television. That television is a vast wasteland. Zoom TV is also a vast wasteland where nothing of value can be said, nothing can be contributed. It's just a recreation of all of our daily human interactions on television.
So do you think that we'll get better Zoom TV shows post quarantine?
No, I think that this is
Really?
it. This is what we have. I think, why would they make more after quarantine? It's no longer relevant then.
I mean, I
I
feel
think
like
we're
we're
even
gonna
going to
get
stop seeing it for the rest of quarantine because uh, in person production has sort of begun again. People are
right.
wearing masks and they're shooting things. All the blockbusters are shooting, all the TV shows are filming.
Right.
On NBC, Superstore is coming back live action
Right.
with 2 newly filmed episodes that are about coronavirus and that are going to have America Ferrera's goodbye in it. I don't know if that already happened by the time you're watching this, but
we'll see. Yeah. So I mean, I don't think it will necessarily be like as much of a trend as it has been during quarantine. But I think that, you know, once this is all over and we've had more time to digest it, I think more creative or interesting or critique worthy media is gonna pop up that potentially uses this format.
Right, like the desktop
And
show in general, like a show
right.
that takes place entirely on a computer.
Yeah, and I mean, like, that's been a thing for a while now, you know, basically
Oh, I
since,
mean, not really on television, not
I
that
mean, there's
much.
the not that much on television, and I don't know how much, you know, it will continue to be on television or not.
Right. I
You
mean,
know, I
basically,
think
what
of
I've seen is the Modern Family episode, and then there's a large collection of horror films and thriller films.
right, but
But
there was
the
the
TV's different because it's like all been
I know,
comedy
hold on.
yucks.
But there was a comedy on HBO with what's her face from Friends, Phoebe, what's her name? I'm forgetting.
There was a Lisa Kudrow.
Yes. There was an HBO show. This is like a decade ago now. Starring Lisa Kudrow, where she was like a psychologist who was doing like therapy sessions online. And that was entirely a desktop comedy show. And I don't think it lasted very long, but like it existed. So like, you know, these things might not be cultural touchstones, but like I know that Lisa Kudrow in an HBO show was not the first time that someone had attempted to do a comedy like this. Um, you know, like I think these shows are out there, but like just no one has watched them because there's been zero interest outside of like the already online YouTube crowd. Because, you know, we can look back at so many YouTube shows got their start this way, you know,
Right.
hit it big, like the Lizzie Bennett Diaries, even like Lonely Girl and all that as an ARG. Like
Right.
it was all in
Vlogging and fictional vlogging, all these
exactly.
things. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a new medium, Zoom, even though it's the same as Skype and it's the same as all web chat. It still
Right.
feels new because it was this business that emerged basically overnight as a
Hmm.
normal part of our
Necessary.
everyday social life.
Yeah, yeah. And as sort of something necessary to keep the wheels of entertainment production rolling.
Right.
But I think you're right that this particular kind of Zoom TV is truly a thing of the moment. But I think that we are going to be looking back and reflecting on 2020 for years and years to come. And I find it really hard to imagine a future where, you know, using the Zoom format is not a part of those reimaginings of this time.
I guess I just don't find that as ridiculous. I mean, I think that the Lisa Kudrow show, the web therapy, I think that that's kind of like the exception that proves the rule. That like this is like a novelty, and when it's no longer necessary to produce things this way, it will disappear.
I agree with you. I think that it will not, like I said, not nearly be as prolific or as important or even necessarily be in the exact same format that we're seeing it in right now. But I don't know. I think that someone is going to do something with it. Like I have too much optimism in human creative potential to think that like some weird indie director somewhere doesn't have a great idea like bubbling
Yeah, I
up
mean,
right
I feel
now.
like I have a lot of a lot of faith in creative potential, which is why I think we don't need this. We can move on
Okay,
from it. We can create something totally new that doesn't suck.
that's fair. If you would like us to continue creating things that hopefully don't suck nearly as much as the Zoom calls that we're critiquing, you can tweet at us at Talking Tropes to tell us what we should continue creating about.
Yep. And next week we're going to have another Standing Stanley Tucci episode
Mm-hmm.
as we continue to watch everything that Stanley has ever been in.
Mwah, mwah, mwah. Perfect. We'll see you later. Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.